Okay, so let's complete this class. I'll remove this. Now, as we know, an object has properties and functions. Now, what are the properties of a student? Student has a name, student has a class, school, roll number, all these properties. And what student do? Appear in exam, attend the lectures, participate in some activities. So all these things. Let's take one very basic properties and functions. Now to initialize these properties, we have a special method. Remember, a function inside a class is known as method. So there is no difference. Only usually we call a method when it is a part of a class. So if I use function or method, it is the same meaning. Now to initialize the state of the instance, we use a special method init. So let's define it. Here, whenever we use 2 times underscore, these all are special methods. These are predefined methods. One of the method is init. Just press enter and see here init underscore underscore. Here self is the first parameter. Self means if I have to call this method, we must pass the instance of this class. So here you can see S1 is an instance of student class, and to call this method we must use S1 here, not other type. We'll discuss this in detail. Now let's come to the student. What are the properties of a student? Student has a name. Student has a roll number or any university number, whatever you want to call it. Student has a class. So I cannot write here class. The reason class has some other meaning, right? Here class. So instead of that, I can write here some other variable, maybe standard or any other property. So let's take a minimum 3. I'll just want to show the example. So we'll take very basic example here. Now you can see here colon, and then we must initialize these properties. We pass these properties from here and we have to create the properties inside this class. So how to create? Just write self dot name equals to name. This is the variable. That value will store in the which variable. It will create one property called name. So same thing we have to do with other properties. Just initialize the value. So this method will initialize all these properties. Now I'll create one more method to print it. Again, it's a very basic example. Let's create a function or method. Usually we call it method when it is a part of a class. Display. Now one thing you can see here, I'll just show you again. When you write here the method name and use parentheses, it will automatically add a self. Let me show you. See here. So it means this method can be called on the instance of this class. That is a self here, the first parameter. There are different types of method. We'll discuss it. So this is the instance method. This method can change the state of this instance. Let me just print. So I'll print name. I'll use placeholder here. Roll number, class, format. Now here self dot name, self dot roll number, and self dot standard. Okay. So name of the class, and this method is to use initialization, these properties to initialize, and then a display method. Now when we create the instance of this student, you can see these properties we have to pass. The first one is a self. Self means this method can be called with the help of instance of this class. Now here on the left side you can see here it's a S1. So we are creating S1. Pass here S1. The other one is a name. Let me pass a name, Avya, and roll number, then standard. So these properties will go here and initialize. Now I'll call this method. How to call? Again, S1 dot. If you press dot, you can see here the list. We can access standard, roll number, name, and display method. Let's call it. Now I'll run this and see here name, roll number, and class. So a very basic example. Now what is the advantage of this class? This is a prototype, so I can create any number of instances. Now let me create one more instance, and this time I'll ask the user to enter these details. So we have to ask name, roll number, and standard. So let's ask name, input, enter student name, then we have roll number, and it is an integer, so I'll write inside int, enter student roll number, and then standard. Again it is integer, enter student class. Now we know these values, so I'll create, let's give her name S2 here, and what type? Student type. What are the parameters we have to pass? Name, roll number, and standard. Now in this class we have one method display, just to print the properties to make sure it is working fine. Again it is very basic example. Let's run this. You can see the first instance which is already here, values are there. For the second instance I'm asking the user to enter the detail. So enter student name. Let's enter name, roll number, and class, and see the output here, name, roll number, and class. So we can create any number of instances here, and here we can write the methods that can change the state of the class, or it can change the state of the instance.